All right, let's hop into it. Here we go. For those who don't know, Darren Braun, photographer, photo illustrator, adventurer. There are so many cool things about you, so many interesting things about you. Of course, I've known you, we're dear friends, but I just want to share Darren Braun with the world, which is why I wanted to have you on today. So welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't do compliments very well.
Yeah.
Uh,
I guess for starters, give me some history. So growing up for you, do you feel like you were always a creative person, or is that something that emerged in you later in life?
sure, I think that everyone is creative. It's within humanity to always try to understand yourself and your environment through making something, whether it be a drawing or, sculpture or, even just the act of making furniture, right? We are doing something creative to meet a need. So within that term, absolutely, I think we are all creative.
Hmm.
But, under the context of how I make money, yes, I'm a creative now.
And photography for you, why photography? What drew you toward the photographic arts?
Well, it's a kind of like a simple need of wanting to stay comfortable.
Hmm.
So I was, music was a big part of my life growing up. I played violin and then later on picked up the cornet, trumpet, and euphonium. And in high school was in marching band. And then one summer in Grapevine, Texas, in full football marching band nylon garb in August on top of blacktop, we were practicing marching. I was holding my euphonium
Mm-hmm.
and thought to myself, I did not want to die in a marching band outfit in the Texas summer. So I quit. And that's when I became interested in photography. And my father kind of had like this old Olympus OM2N, super old school
Mm-hmm.
camera. So I just picked it up and got into photography and immediately fell in love and just became obsessed with it at
Yeah,
14, 15, 15.
at 15. Okay.
15.
And that's what you end up going to college for? You focused on photography?
Yes, yeah, I had a choice. I was either going to go into, oh man, what was that degree at the time? Management of Information Systems or photography. I was really big into computers back then, and this would be, in the 90s. So at the time in the 90s, my job, I was very lucky. I was doing computer technical support for CompUSA, Toshiba, Apple Computers, oh my God, Hewlett Packard printers. At the exact same time, I got into photography.
Hmm.
And then that, of course, coalesced with a love of all things Photoshop and Adobe.
Ooh, right.
But, I had a choice. Did I want to go into corporate office work or did I want to try to, kind of reach towards a dream and become a photographer? So I decided to go to college for photography.
Nice. And what do you feel like it is about photography that drew your interest, like the quality of the art form itself or the quality of the work itself?
It was certainly the technical and process oriented aspects of it.
Hmm.
And also the challenge of understanding a device that can create something beautiful. It gave me a very controlled way to capture the world around me.
And I mean, that's an interesting part of photography, I would say, is the documentarian aspect of it.
Sure. Yeah.
But then you end up taking it a quite a step further in my mind, and not doing traditional artistic photography, not like landscapes or simple exposure layering or
Sure.
things like that. But I think your technical knowledge down the line ends up turning into what you might call photo illustration.
Yeah.
So if you could like define what that art form kind of is, what it looks like.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, moving from kind of like a documentarian style of photography and moving into far more of a kind of ephemeral illustration, right? Because what illustration does is it's trying to take an idea and visually represent it with no language, right? So illustration is meant to convey complex ideas simply and to anyone, pull out emotions or evoke a response. And, in the past, things that I really did enjoy is portraying very complex technical and scientific ideas in a creative form. And you're, in a way, it's kind of like a boilerplate. You're boiling, complex ideas down into something that is palatable and easier to digest. You're really trying to draw them in and create an interest into what you are illustrating. So, in a way, while illustration is not a complete form of communication, it is an excellent way to draw people in to more complex ideas.
Yeah, and doing that through photography is interesting because you're taking, I would imagine, lots of different elements that you photograph and assembling them in interesting ways.
You can, yeah, that's a way of doing it. In the past, an excellent way of doing illustration has always been a way to kind of suspend disbelief, or even to combine metaphors together. The way it has evolved these days is that, obviously illustration can no longer be shown in a print form. It has to be shown in any form that it can be, whether it be with micro motion pieces, with, an image that can be seen on an 8 by 10 or as tiny as a screen, right? Because your form factor decides on what you make,
Mm.
right? How
Mhm.
how it can be visually read. And if you make something overly complex with lots of detail, you can't necessarily always see that on a phone. So you have to really simplify what's being illustrated even more. And, just like all art, you're dealing with metaphor, iconography, throwing it all together in a blender to try to, make sense of it together.
Mhm. It's one quality that I've always loved about you, which is your pursuit of pushing things further, which really I think is born out of, and correct me if I'm wrong, a pursuit of knowledge, like a pursuit of wanting to understand things technically further,
Yep.
or simply just wanting to understand the world further and deeper.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on, but it's also kind of wanting to connect to other artisans as well. So when you're collaborating with people, there are a certain amount of expectations, especially when you're dealing with a client and an art director, right? They might want to portray something that deals with people, right? And when you're dealing with people, you have to deal with set design, styling, hair and makeup, all these things that kind of help shape a story,
Hmm.
ways to remove distractions so you can once again focus on an idea. But yes, there are also ways technically that you can kind of push ideas forward. You're looking at ways to pull the viewer in by creating something that either would be surreal or impossible.
But still seemingly simple, right, when you see it,
Yes.
but actually the idea of it is very complex and much deeper than I think the average person would think.
And it's almost like illustration is an unfinished product. You start the sentence, but you don't end it. It draws people in because they have to finish it themselves in their mind. And of course, now you just prompt it.
One thing that you mentioned is the collaborative aspect of the industry and or just of the creative process in general,
Oh, yeah.
right? Now, commercially, obviously, lots of collaboration.
Yes.
If you're a solo painter or a solo sculptor out there or something, then obviously you don't have to collaborate very
No, of course
often,
not. No.
probably.
Yeah.
But I'm sure someone's still commissioning the painting, or you're still painting something that is meant to be sold at some point.
Yeah.
So something is informing the decisions, no matter what kind of artist you are, what kind of
Mhm.
creative you are. But for us in the commercial side of it, why do you think the collaborative process is such an important part of what we do? And how do you feel it pushes the work? Like, what direction do you feel like it pushes the work?
Well, okay. So you can't be an expert in everything. And also, everyone has a different perspective.
Mm.
And as an artist, if you're sitting there and you're trying to execute something believing that you are the expert in everything, you're going to fail.
Hmm.
You have to lean on the strengths of other people. And not only that, but how they perceive the world. Everyone has a very limited perception. And in order to reach as many people as possible, you have to collaborate. And not only that, but it always elevates the product that you are producing. And that
Hmm.
could be as simple as, going out and having a coffee with someone that is creative, but very apart from your field. I love talking with painters and sculptors because they offer perspectives that I would never think about. In a way, we're always stronger together, you know?
Hmm.
So,
What is your creative process? So let's say you're just getting, something in the door, a job in the door, a project, whatever that is, and there is an end goal, right? Or a message that you're looking for.
so my first approach is I have to create boundaries and constraints.
Mhm.
Um, there are practical ways that you have to, first of all, you have to meet a budget, you know? So you have to determine what is practically available and can be produced. But beyond kind of your practicalities, I like to immerse myself in the world that I'm trying to represent.
Mm.
I try to understand the audience that it's going to represent.
Yeah.
And then I seek out an environment that will help me percolate. I want to see textures, line, shape, form, colors, lighting within an environment that will spark an idea. Close my eyes. I get down my journal and I just start writing lots of words. Just nonsensical sometimes, not in a sentence. I just write words that I believe represent what I'm trying to do.
Mm.
And once I'm done with that, I'll go through and I'll look at, definitions and synonyms and all these other types of things that will help me define what I'm trying to represent. And then, of course, metaphors that these words represent.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the immersion thing I think is immensely important, even just maybe for the creative process across the board. Being out in the world, experiencing things, that's what really feeds
Oh, yeah.
the memory bank of creativity, right?
Of
It's like
course, yeah.
those experiences.
Experience, sound,
Yeah.
everything, all of it.
And then for you, I just only because I know personally that, you're an adventurer, you spend a lot of time outdoors, you spend a lot of time hiking, doing all kinds of things, biking 4 by 4,
Mhm,
um, kinda anywhere and everywhere.
mhm.
What is it that experience does for you? What does that feed inside of you, being outdoors, being in nature?
Well, I think it's less about feeding and more about taking away. I do not have access to the modern world most of the time. I have no distractions.
Hmm.
And most of the time, when I do these things, I'm seeking a place where there's no connectivity. I'm not distracted. That's easier. In a way, it's meditation. My thinking is less fragmented, and I can really carry thoughts for a much longer period of time. Where, in the modern world, you're out here, your phone's going off, your emails, your text, your phone calls, TV shows, Instagram, TikToks, whatever.
Mhm.
You can feed your distractions with just consistently and constantly. But when you are disconnected and even forcefully disconnected, it's easy to keep your thoughts on rails
Hmm.
and just really explore an idea. But then also it allows your mind to wander.
Mhm.
If your mind gets bored, which is very important, you can just kind of go somewhere that you never think you would ever go.
Yeah, and I think the interesting part about you bringing that piece up is there's definitely a philosophical tradition of this, right? Like even the ancient Greeks, like when you think about Socrates or the Stoics, even Aristotle, Plato, those, pupils, all of those share one thing, and that is the ability to sit with your thoughts
Mm.
and allow your thinking to
Yeah.
wander,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is where kind of like the whole piece about boredom does come into play,
Yeah.
and why boredom is so important for the creative process. So it's cool that you do that with nature. That was something that was a big part for me, in my younger days. I feel detached from nature more than I ever have been in my entire life, I would say,
Mm.
now. And internally, I would say that you can feel the difference, you know? Like, I can feel when I haven't been on a hike recently or something like that, if a few months go by, I will feel myself be maybe a little more agitated some
Oh, of
mornings,
course. Yeah.
or, like you said, your thoughts are more fragmented, because you just haven't gotten that exposure to remove the rest of the world from
Yeah.
imposing itself on you,
Yep.
and allowing yourself to be sort of back in a natural environment that is not a bunch of skyline, a bunch of dings in your pocket, a bunch of
Yeah.
honks on the road,
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because in a way, in commercial art, our job is to impose these thoughts on people.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Maybe that's why we're even more.
Yeah, yeah, you wanna get away from it because it's like, "What am I doing with my life? I'm imposing on people. Other people's ideas onto other people,"
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
If it didn't pay well, I don't know, maybe I would do something else.
Yeah, sure, yeah, yeah. Maybe we should do something else.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think that's interesting. It's such a cool part about you too, because you do a great job of making time for it, being intentional with those journeys that you go on. And then I think the other thing too that you and I think share as people is a deep curiosity,
Mm,
you know, always pursuing to know the deeper idea behind something, or really the deeper learning in the world.
yeah.
Is that something for you that's always been a part of you, or it's behavioral, or do you feel like it's something that you learned?
Both, and my mom is, to this day, a science teacher, and, the scientific theory has always driven me, and I think that why it's called a scientific theory is a little bit irrelevant because I think it is applied in any process. But a lot of that process is discovery,
Hmm.
right? Trial and error. Does this work? And that has fed why I want to always try to understand, not only my environment, but the society that I live in and things like that. But even within technology and kind of where we're heading as a species, I feel that trying to understand those directions uh, gives me peace
Hmm.
in a way. But, curiosity can be learned because it is rewarding. And I think, that's just human nature to seek out a reward, whether it be knowledge or, you're trying to satiate yourself in one way, shape, or form. So curiosity is really just a way to satiate myself.
That reward can be big, and I think that reward can also be unexpected at times,
Oh yeah.
which is
That-
is interesting. Even if it's about something that you don't practice on a daily basis, like in your education or in your career or whatever it is that you're out there in the world doing on a daily basis, even when you're learning deeply about something else,
Mm.
that something else can inform your own process, or
Oh,
inform
absolutely.
your own creative process,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think is, yeah, so interesting and fascinating. It kind of goes back to what you were saying about immersion, like getting immersed in something
Hmm.
that's different, because then that thing informs, or talking to the painters and sculptors, because
Yeah.
even if you're going to focus on photography, but you go out there and you discuss something with a painter, well, that painter might, you know, give you a learning or something that you
Oh yeah.
take
No,
with
it's
you.
yeah, a different perspective to take home,
Yeah.
even if it's unintentional, right? Because we all hear certain things within a conversation
Hmm.
in or out of context.
When you think about your function as a photographer now, where do you see that skill set being most applicable in the commercial world?
Well, I mean, that's kind of a triggering question because I feel the creative industry is in a bit of a free fall. In the past, technology has always kind of been a disruptor, right?
Hmm.
And that's certainly kind of like the new thing is disruption, disruption. Now, it is a little bit more important to convey authenticity and realism, mainly because we're kind of living in a world where we choose to believe what is real. And we're also subjected to a world where what is real is perceived as fake. So, more now than ever, I feel myself gravitating away from illustration as a way to convey ideas and more as a realism as a way to convey ideas.
Hmm.
I think authenticity is more important than anything right now.
Mm-hmm. And will likely continue to be the more we use, generative imagery
Yeah.
and things like that, because I feel like once that becomes more of the imagery on the internet and we reach a tipping point, what the populace is going to want is authenticity more than anything else.
Yeah, I think we're already at the beginning of it. If you look at within kind of like the younger creatives in the world, they're gravitating towards film. You
Mm-hmm.
can't blame them. This is something that it's real, you know, and it is captured within the bounds of reality. And it's I think that wanting to grasp onto something real kind of stops you from kind of falling into the void, you know. Companies are catching on to this, and not necessarily companies that are selling products, but I think that companies that help perpetuate content creation, for example, Sony, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have created a way to hardware embed into a raw file if something has been manipulated or not.
Hmm.
Um,
That's interesting.
Hopefully, it will become successful because it'll be a way to check authenticity. And, this is certainly a thing, that is even AI companies or tech companies are kind of grasping onto this because, for example, Google is now doing non-visual watermarks in their generative AI
Mm-hmm.
images. You can detect them in Photoshop by using a solarization layer, but uh, it allows, essentially a digital forensic person to tell if a image is real or not.
Right.
In a world where, oh my God, I sound like a movie. In a world where nothing is believed. Y- It is a little bit confusing to live in a world right now where you don't necessarily believe everything that you're shown.
Uh-huh. It's one thing for someone forensically to be able to tell, right, if something
Yeah.
is real or fake. But until it's a something in front of the public that is just flying through a feed of some kind,
Yeah.
getting all of this information input
Mhm.
into them,
Mhm.
I mean, that's really the place that it's most useful, right?
Oh, yeah. Immediately. It has to be shown. Like, for example, I was contacted to do an illustration to represent a person that, did a silly deed, right?
Mhm.
And I hired a body double. Um, I got some stock imagery, mashed it all together to create an illustration of this person. And the very front and center thing when this image was published, it said that it was a photo illustration.
Mhm.
So the public would know the image was not real,
Yeah,
even though it looked believable.
right.
Now, and that took a significant amount of effort to make it believable, weeks of work. Now it can be done instantaneously. What you used to call deep fakes is now an everyday occurrence.
Mhm. Right.
And it is shown with no disclaimer and oftentimes is meant to deceive the public.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Companies are not going to be able to create a way for the world to mitigate that. It has to be done with policymaking.
Right, because there's too much advantage, in being able to deceive for the deceiver,
Oh, of course.
essentially,
Yeah.
and really the public's ability to discern between something that's real or not real, yeah, I think you're right that that will have to be policy, and if it is going to be private sector, it would have to be private sector in collaboration with
Yeah. Yeah.
policymakers.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the opportunity to deceive and the advantage that it gives you is just way more powerful
Oh, yeah.
and
And
more interesting.
it's already been used at a mass scale by everyone,
Yeah.
you know.
And at least traditionally, you in the industry that we work in, I would say the thing that's ethically in step with it is the fact that we know we're making ads and the world knows that it's an ad when they see it.
Of course, yeah.
We have a shared understanding of what is an advertisement, what is promoted content, and what typically is organic. But when we're reaching that precipice now of I can't really tell the difference anymore
Mhm.
between what's organic, what's not.
Mhm.
Is it real? Is that a real human being?
Mhm. And you also can't expect the public to be experts on image making, you know,
Definitely. Yeah.
which unfortunately we have to be right now.
It's sort of the Wild West.
Yep.
And then the other thing I think is interesting, and maybe talking a little bit about this together will help some other creatives out there in the world feel alleviated somewhat. I would say that now, while we're recording this in 2025, but while we're recording this, I would say that this year is the first year that our business really took a different kind of hit
Mhm.
than
Absolutely.
we were used to seeing in the creative industry. And in talking with people who are not just in video making, but also in other parts of the industry, photographers, even artists in general, I would say this is the first year that across the board creatives have felt what you're talking about, which is something changed this year. Part of that is constraints on large companies to spend money just because.
Yeah, economics is I think the very first factor.
Yeah, I mean, that is like the top line factor, right?
Yeah,
Because
always.
that's hitting everyone,
Yeah.
right? That's the global factor. And then I would say from a content creation perspective, it partially is the fact that content has become so disposable. Like
Mhm.
we've run into this place where everything is just so disposable and is really only good for about 6 seconds. Uh
That.
if that, and it has to be only good for the first interaction.
Yep.
People don't come back to content
Yep.
unless we're talking about entertainment on a streaming platform,
Sure.
but or maybe like a YouTube channel that they.
Yeah, informative.
Yeah,
Something you're trying to learn.
yeah, know and love. Yeah, like there's those sort of caveats I would say, but in general, content, especially commercial content, it is only good for that moment,
Mhm.
that one moment of interaction,
Mhm.
and your hope is the person that got that message you tried to make
Yeah, it stays with them. Yeah.
stays with them, but they are not going to come back to it.
No.
And they're not going to do much more than if you really got them hooked, they clicked the link, went to the place where you wanted them to go.
Yeah, sure.
But that percentage is going to be really low
Yeah.
because there's about 250 million other messages that they're being inundated with.
Oh yeah, constantly, everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pervasive.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's definitely caused a dip. So I would say that, yeah, across the board, everyone, every creative business, every creative individual,
yep.
every freelancer out there,
Yep.
doesn't matter who you are, you probably are feeling it in 2025.
Oh, big time. Yeah. A lot of it is just the way that the economy has shaped itself, on top of the cost of producing, you know, products.
Hmm.
And once again, just to touch on it again, the very first thing that gets cut is creative.
However, kind of calling back to that like better together piece, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because um, being in a commercial industry, being a commercial artist, it gives you access to the network of others,
Hmm.
right? Other commercial artists, right? So you and I know a lot of other versions of you and I
Hmm.
out there in the world. And And that whole perspective point that you brought up, which is each of them offer a different perspective, a different outlook, and therefore a different creative process and approach.
Mhm.
And I think what I'm starting to find is actually more useful for our clients than anything else is when we democratize the creative process
Mhm.
and when we expand the inputs of the creative process. So rather than just me working on a job, giving my direction, doing this or that, whatever that might be, it's pulling on different people from all over the country. So instead of me always being the one to get on a plane, fly somewhere, and tell some story,
Of course.
uh, we've decided that why not build our own internal network
Mm.
across the country
Mhm.
so that
Yeah.
I can give my input, but I can hand that baton off to another creative person.
Correct. Yeah.
You take the baton and go run with it.
Yeah. Well, in a way that's also, evolving, in my opinion, the job of a creative director or an art director or a director of art and design.
Mhm,
You get handed a job and an idea because this person trusts you and properly conveying it and elevating it. And part of your responsibility is to do that any means possible now. And whether that be, instead of keeping everything in house, I think what you're touching on is going and finding a person within your network that is more of an expert than you are,
mhm.
um, to produce the best thing possible. And once again, it's all about collaboration. You know,
Yeah.
they can take a vision or a creative idea that you have and execute it for you. Technology has allowed it to be a little bit more accessible, you
Mhm.
know, and as a way, once again, dealing with constraints, now we are dealing with, economic constraints. So why would you fly to, Washington and execute this idea and have the additional expenditure of going there when you could hire locally that has the same skill set
Mhm.
but is able to produce your vision?
Yeah, the economics of it, was probably also the starting point,
Yeah.
I think, which kinda always has to be, right? Like you said earlier, you're aiming at a budget,
Yeah. You have to.
every time.
Yep.
And I think the exciting part of it is the fact that it just broadens the horizon of what's possible and what kind of inputs you might run into.
Mm.
Because even when I pass off, let's say, a creative deck of some kind to another, let's say, videographer in some city somewhere, all I'm doing is saying, this is the broader vision.
Yeah.
Here are the pieces that I can give you
Mhm.
to get there,
Mhm.
right? But when you go out there and capture it,
Oh,
do it through your lens, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Do it through your eye.
Yeah. And embrace the unexpected.
Yeah, and embrace what comes up because,
Yeah.
you'll be there, I won't be there. But I think what I'm also saying is I don't need to be there.
Right.
The control, uh, essentially, we're loosening the reins,
Mm.
and I think what we're finding, at least I would hope that this is what we're finding in the creative industry across the board, is the less you control every single little
Oh, yeah.
thing,
Sure.
uh, the more it opens up the opportunity for creative and exciting things to happen.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Part of the exciting thing when you have all this content out there in the world, right? You have all this stuff that we make commercially every day to push out there. I think there's key things to remember. One of the first things to remember is that you can't lay the burden too much on one single piece of content. So there's so much of it out there in the world.
Yeah.
If you put something out and it's not very successful, don't harp on it too much.
Sure. Yeah.
Don't spend too much time agonizing over the data points.
Mhm.
Uh, and just let it be something that was unsuccessful and move on and stay true to your core message and your core
Yeah.
brand values. And then I would say the other piece of that that's exciting for us, like people like us as content creators in a sense. I mean, not like influencer content creators, but content creators in the fact that
making content.
we make stuff. And pretty much everything is content now.
Yeah.
If you're a brand, if you're a company who hires us to execute a project, every single project we're going to bring right that 100% to. We're going to bring, no matter what, the integrity of the project is what we're after, and doing something creative and interesting. But you need not just one of those things anymore to get your message across.
Mm-hmm.
You need 1,000 of those things now.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think part of the thing that I'm seeing, especially from the data perspective, is one piece of content cannot do what it used to do.
Oh no.
One Super Bowl commercial, you know, does you some good, but it's sort of a blip on the big map.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're kind of touching on is the idea of the experience, right? We all have to see something multiple times for it to stick.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it does stick and you go to pursue it, how can you immerse yourself into it?
Mm-hmm.
And if you kind of take that idea and look at how traditional museums, for example, are having a very hard time getting crowds to come in, but then you have a museum, for example, like Meow Wolf, that's doing quite well because
Mhm.
they're going through and they're creating a way for you to experience the artwork.
Right.
You really have to stoke audio visual emotions to get people to grab on and remember something.
Mhm.
And in a way, we're so bombarded by all sorts of media to make it memorable. You have to evoke and really dig in deep and draw that emotion out. And that requires even more these days.
Pretty much all content made for brands, unless you have some experiential activation or something like that, is mostly digital.
Mhm.
So it's mostly intangible, and it is not going to interact with you through your senses outside of eyesight,
Sure.
looking at a monitor,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, however, that's the cohesion piece that I would argue for narrative moving forward, is brands need to start looking at their corporate messaging, their ads. That cohesion needs to be a longer narrative arc
Of course.
over time, so that you're looking at an entire quarter to get the sentiment for one message across,
Yeah.
not the 1 week that you post the one video that you made.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing, I think, really expanding that narrative
Yeah.
for a brand.
Long form narrative to, push experience.
Mhm.
I think that's a very good point. But we'll see. I think as, the market is a little bit less chaotic and, data driven spending kind of stabilizes a little bit,
Mhm.
maybe something like that could be a little bit more palatable to companies.
Yeah. Right.
But right now we're just getting little kind of experimental nuggets. Let's see what sticks. And I think what you're getting at, and I believe is true, is that you cannot have these small little nuggets and expect it to draw great results.
When you were talking about the move back toward film and towards some things, it made me just remember that there really is something to tangibility
Oh, absolutely.
and the human experience, and the way that your brain processes the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, it makes sense, obviously, right? It's logical that that would be the case because you have hands, you have all of these senses that engage with the external world.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point is the tangibility and the experiential
Oh, yeah.
aspect of it.
Absolutely.
And I think it's interesting and kind of nice, actually, that, like, even though I personally don't want to go back and shoot on film and be in a dark room
Yeah.
and do all that processing and have all those chemicals and do all that shit again.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. A chemical aspect for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Um, but having had that experience and being trained that way, I think it wires your brain up to understand the craft in a certain physical, tangible way that I'm glad that younger people who grew up in a digital world are reaching back.
Absolutely. I think it also the limitation of it is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't do everything,
Right.
it opens up exploration.
Yeah.
How can I create something within the bounds of physical media?
Yeah, the limitations boosting the creative process is something that keeps coming up
Yeah.
on the podcast. Like everyone I talk to seems to have that same thing. Like
Yeah, it's important.
a lot of times when I face the limitations, that's what creates the exciting discovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you and I could probably talk for 10 hours continuously about all this stuff.
No,
So,
absolutely not. I'm exhausted.
yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for joining me. Thanks, Burrito. Thanks for being on the show. Our executive producers are myself and Jessica Kramer. Our producer is Giselle Saucedo. Our editor is Max Smith. Music by Creators. I'm your host, Roger Peters. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.